Hey, welcome back to the Bitcoin Reformation Podcast. I'm Ben Houck, joined by my friends David Ruffner and Jared Townley, and we're excited for another episode and excited to have on a guest. But Jared, how are you today?
Today is April 8th as we're recording this, and so I have a deadline by this Friday to write all of Holy Week services. So with my new job, my new role, I am the only pastor here, which means that's my job now. So coming from a team of three, a little overwhelmed with that, trying also to do good stuff of sitting down with people, getting to know about them, hear their stories, while also the sort of tyranny of the urgent stuff. So overwhelmed incredibly, but yet also incredibly excited as well. So this past Sunday, I was officially installed. And just such a good service of hope, some hype too, I would even say, and just general excitement about what is and what could be too. So things are really moving, and I'm trying to hang on the best that I can, even as everything outside of the Bitcoin world happens around me, and I'm trying to think about those things alongside too. So that's my life. David, what's going on in your world?
Well, my background's a little bit different. Instead of being in Big Bear, California, I'm dialing in here from Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I grew up. I came to visit with my mother, who's been having some health issues, and so was able to be with her at a few, I guess you could say, appointments today, but got her home then as well, and here we are. So. It's green grass here, though, which I love. The green and even the dry mountain green hasn't quite made it to Big Bear yet. So green grass here and all is well. And as Ben said, we are really thrilled to have with us today a guest, and that would be Jim Crider. So Jim, I'm looking at your website there at Intentional Living Financial Planning, and so that's the first plug. Is that Jim is a certified financial planner, runs a business of the same, has a young team. Jim, maybe you can talk to that. We were thinking, and even thinking to a podcast I listened to on last year. I know you at least started off geared towards young people, young families, and love that. And it looks like you have gathered around yourself a young team as well. But Jim and his wife, Kendra, have four what look to be beautiful children, all with that first name A, Jim. I love it. So, and Jim, is it true? Three boys and then the daughter?
That's right. Yeah.
Three boys and Jim, I'm asking that specifically because that is the Ruffner family recipe as well. That's what my wife Megan and I have three boys, and then our youngest is our daughter. She's a freshman in high school right now. She has some young men who have an interest in her, and here's what I have to tell you, Jim. That's really hopeful news for you. She's impressed by very little that boys can do because she's had these three older brothers all the time. So I kid you not, it's as if the young men come up to her and are like, "Did you see me? Did you see me do this?" And she's like, not impressed. I've been watching stupid people tricks my whole life. So there's a combination of that. She's not impressed, and some older brothers and their friends sort of running scrimmage line for her that I just love, and hopefully you and your wife will enjoy in the years to come, even as you enjoy what looks to be more early childhood years. So Jim's joining us, he said today, from Texas, his home in Texas, and we witnessed Jim on a few podcasts, including Preston Pish's podcast a year ago. Really loved it, reached out, and then reached out again, and he graciously has come to be with us today. As far as the conversation, it's not an overly scripted conversation we have here. A husband, a father, as we've already said, a Christian man. It's a Christian home. But then this vocation, this calling that you have, Jim, to serve individuals and families and trying to get them to or help them in their stewarding impulse. How do I steward the gifts that I have, that we have, from our vocations, from serving others? We serve our neighbors. The very jobs by which we serve our neighbors serve us. They give us a paycheck in many instances. And with that paycheck, we care for the here and now, as you said, Jared, the tyranny sometimes of the here and now. But sometimes we try and lift up our heads to the hills and plan for the future. And that's my, I guess, cursory introduction to Jim and maybe financial planning. We would want you to share more about that. So we've got our Christian faith, we've got family life, We've got vocations and stewardship. And then, kind of as Ben also alluded to in his portion of the introduction, we've got this thing that joins us all together as well, common topic, lesser than our families, lesser than the gospel of Jesus Christ, but a very important thing in our lives, which is Bitcoin. So that's kind of just, maybe I just put like giant, hopefully not boundaries that limit us, but we've got a lot of free space inside those boundaries I hope to play today. And so, Jim, even as I've introduced to you, I'm going to hand it to you and ask you to introduce yourself to us and our audience all the more.
Yeah, I'd say those aren't limitations. Those are launching pads.
I love it.
Yeah, as was mentioned, I own a business here in Texas. We serve clients across the U.S. I think we have clients in about 25 states right now, families we work with. As far as that goes, is financial planning. So basically all things money. A significant amount of our clients own businesses. So a lot of like business consulting, tax planning, estate planning, we manage investments, Bitcoin, like a significant portion of our clients own Bitcoin directly. All of our clients have exposure to Bitcoin in some capacity. Most of the people we actually work with did not own Bitcoin prior to working with us. They were looking for if you sat down on Google, like, I need help with retirement planning, and they found us. And then eventually we introduced them to Bitcoin. I don't lead with that on our website or anything. Otherwise, I'd probably scare them away, and I don't want to do that. So, we help with all things money. And then, we have my wife. Her name's Kendra. Kendra and I have 4 young kids. Our oldest is 7. Our youngest is 2. Having 3 boys and then the daughter, like, I love our boys. They're a lot of fun. They beat each other up. And then everyone dotes on Adeline, our little girl. And it's so much fun having a little girl. I didn't think it was possible. When I saw the pregnancy test or whatever, the reveal of gender, I thought my eyes were misleading me. There's no way that we can make a girl. But yeah, love our certainly rambunctious house at the life stage we're in, but it's a great time.
Awesome.
Jim, I'm interested a little bit in to hear a little bit more about your financial planning business, Intentional Living, FP.com, right?
Yes, sir.
And so I was surfing around on the website. You are a fee-only approach, so you have a different approach than what maybe some financial planners that I've worked with, that maybe some of our listeners in the Lutheran community have used things like Thrivent, used to be Aid Association for Lutherans, some of these fraternal benefits companies that have a certain kind of range of products that they can sell, but it's very limited. And so just tell us a little bit about your business and that kind of an approach. So how do you make money, and what's the business look like?
So fee only is indicative of the compensation model. So fee only means that we're not able to sell products or get paid commissions. Also, we are an independent financial planning firm. So I don't work for a large institution. So I'm not trained on how to sell somebody's mutual funds and then, push forward and, hey, go sell this annuity or this fund, or, hey, this product we just launched, we need to boost up the numbers there. I don't do any of that. We generally look at how we work with the families we serve is starting off with truly what is important to you. Not even just asking about goals, but peeling that further back. What do you as an individual and you as a family, what do you value in life? And then how does that play its role? How does that work its way out through the goals that you'll have? And then helping you navigate the decisions that you'll inevitably face. And then finally actually taking action for that. So that's what we do. So full financial planning. We don't sell products. In its base sense, we help people articulate what's important to them, and then we help them use their money in the most efficient and effective way for that purpose.
And as opposed to some financial planners whose majority of clients would probably fall in the getting closer to retirement category, it seems like you're interested in working also with younger folks, with entrepreneurs, with people who are, as I noted, with great interested in early retirement. That sounds nice to me. I love my job. I love the organization that I serve with, but I wouldn't mind being retired early. So tell us a little bit about kind of working with that set of folks.
So I spent the first 6-7 years in finance working mostly with traditional type clients. So people who are about to retire or were already retired, helping them navigate retirement in an efficient manner. And one thing that was echoed regularly was, I wish I would have met you when I was in my 30s. It would have made all the difference had I met you a few decades ago. So when I started my own firm back in 2021, I decided initially I wanted to go downstream and capture families earlier on. If we're there to help you make decisions, if we can capture those decisions earlier on in your life, it'll help you ideally avoid many of the mistakes that I've seen over and over again, both mistakes financially and also mistakes with other parts of your life, your time, your other resources, your relationships, and helping people really navigate those decisions well and intentionally. So that was very informative of who we started working with. Now, where we've progressed to as a firm is we have different niches within our firm that we get to serve. So we have intentional builders. Those are our younger families, generally seeking early financial independence. We also have another section. It's intentional legacy. Intentional legacy is more of our traditional type client who's within a few years of retirement or who are retired, and we're working through retirement planning and tax planning in retirement, and Social Security optimization and estate planning, and making sure that you're leaving a legacy, not just building assets. We also have intentional entrepreneurs. So we serve a significant amount of people who run businesses and working with them and the specific needs they have. So yeah, we have different demographics we work with based off of the needs that you have.
That's awesome. I'll ask one last question and then I'll throw it to my partners here. So obviously, don't give us any personal details, but could you talk a little bit about any clients who are on a Bitcoin standard and have kind of retired, taken early retirement in some way? They're living off of Bitcoin proceeds. Do you have clients like that, or is that a little more down the road, a little more aspirational?
We do have clients like that, but frankly, for the most part, a lot of the clients are more like me. So I could have retired about 5 years ago had I wanted to. Yeah. But I enjoy what I do. It's a very honored position that I'm invited into people's lives in a very honored way, and I don't take it lightly. And that's where a lot of the clients we serve, we help them reframe, not just what are your goals, but actually what's important to you. And if you really pull those layers back, instead of saying like, oh, it's my goal is to retire I'm 35, my goal is to retire at 40. You ask but why? What are you getting at with that retirement? It's like, I wish I had more time to spend with my family and I could leave an impact on other people's lives. It's like, okay, well, could you have that optimum impact by just being retired? And what else would that help you do? And a lot of times the conclusion is, I don't have to stop working. I just want more freedom and flexibility to spend my time doing what's important to me and being with the people that are important to me in life. So most of the people that we work with who are at a place of early financial freedom have actually chosen not to stop working in full. They've allowed that to be a means of freedom to pursue other passions. And that's usually step into a business that they really enjoy and they can build in a way that is purposeful and fulfilling, and they're doing deep, meaningful work. And there are a few people who are living the early retired life, but I would say it's actually the exception. And I think that's actually, there's you may have heard of it. It's called the FIRE movement, Financial Independence, Retire Early. I don't hear about FIRE as much nowadays. I think it's sort of dangerous though, especially if you take FIRE at face value. I think what's going to happen is you have a lot of people who in their 20s and early 30s think that all they want is to not have to work as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really foolish goal to pursue. And I think a lot of these people are going to neglect so many things in life around them that should be important to them. So at the expense of not having to work at 36, then one day at 36, they're going to have a few $1,000,000 in the bank. They're going to retire, and maybe they're going to go backpack in Southeast Asia and live a little bit cheaper life and get away from their computer because they've worked too much over the last several years. And after about 4 months of this, they're going to realize, I don't have community. I don't really have much of a purpose. And what am I doing? And I think there's going to be a lot of regret there. So like for me personally, again, I have 4 young kids, and I certainly want early financial freedom. I didn't initially have to keep working several years ago, but there's other things I want to do with my life, and I certainly want to be able to be generous. And there's other purposes beyond not having to work that informs why I continue to work now. But still, my goal is at 45 to not have to work and have a lifestyle and the ability to give at a certain really high threshold, frankly. But I think if I think about it, why is 45 important to me? It's because at that point, my kids will still be in the house and they'll still have time to do things with us and us with them. So the primary objective of early financial freedom is so I can spend time with the people I love. How foolish would it be for me to forget that? And for right now, from 35 to 45, stiff arm my wife and kids. That way, in 10 years, I can say, hey, guys, I made a whole bunch of money. We can hang out now. It's like, well, forget you, Dad. Where were you for the last decade? You were at work all the time. You weren't there for my baseball games, and you never tucked me in at night. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
I've had countless conversations of people who express neglect of who have experienced wild financial success, yet did so on the altar of sacrificing their family on the altar of that financial success.
Well put. I'm sure it can happen in any job, but when I was actively a pastor, at least the conversation my wife and I had, it was the distinction we made. Whether the line between these two camps is always bright and clear might be questionable, but I said to my wife, really, it's true that my family will be called upon from time to time to sacrifice with me in my calling, my vocation as a pastor. But I believe that is wholly different than sacrificing my family for the sake of being a pastor. Now just supplant pastor, just change it out for any number of other vocations, right? There are times when our vocations, weigh heavy, or our family participates with us in those. That's the sacrificing with. But I really like this distinction you've made of maybe aiming for something like financial pursuits while in the midst of actually sacrificing the very people you purport to serve down the line. That's well put, Jim. I really appreciate that.
I mean, if you look at pastoral qualifications, a lot of that center around your ability to steward your family well. Are you a husband of one wife? How are your children? How are your relationships? And then, of course, all right, is he able to teach? That's another thing. But I think there's a massive, not even a cause to pause, but issue if your house is in shambles. So you can do ministry well. Like, I think according to Paul in New Testament writings, that would actually be cause for
dismissal.
Looking at maybe this guy shouldn't be in ministry, actually.
That's right. Well, I'll press my question then in that direction still, although I'll tell you, I want to go back and I want to hear how you got into financial planning to begin with, and that I didn't start us there and we didn't. But since we're talking about the New Testament, we're talking about Paul, and you shared other places. You've said, I am a Christian man. This clearly is important to you. Would you share with us a bit about your life in Christ? Did you grow up in a Christian home? You and Kendra, is this something you were always focused on? Did having kids cause you to focus on this more? Anything you could share there would be truly a delight for us.
I grew up in Texas, where most people grow up in a Christian home. Relatively culturally Christian home. And my parents are great. They took us to church on the weekends. I was super active in youth group from middle school through high school. I don't know when I became a Christian. I was baptized at a very early age. I was baptized again in middle school and in high school. I knew all the right answers. But I would say there was lack of surrender for a significant portion of my life. I, for instance, in high school, led all the Bible studies and accountability groups and these things while being completely duplicit and phony. Like I, was saying, hey, you should protect your purity while I was sleeping with my girlfriend. Like before youth group and stuff like that. I was a phony, and I don't know if at that point I was a Christian or not. I was either like massively stiff-arming the Holy Spirit and blocking out that conviction, or was truly not saved. I genuinely don't know. But I do know that my freshman year of college, I had a big old scholarship to a fancy school up north, but my parents made me stay in state for my freshman year. And I was really upset about that. So I stayed in state and I went to a little Christian school that I wasn't excited to be at. But I decided that while I was there, my freshman year, I would just devote that year to finding out actually who I believe Jesus is, and in light of that, how I'm supposed to live. I figured that would be my mission for my first year before I transferred to the fancy school. So day one, that was my objective, and I immediately that day I met who's still one of my best friends to this day. His name's Daniel, and he and I decided to meet every night at 10 o'clock, and we would talk through what we learned in our time with the Lord that morning. We would read Proverbs together, and we would pray, and we did that every night. And after a few weeks, I remember like, hey, let's share our testimonies tonight. And I remember Daniel went first, and he just broke down sobbing because he was confessing things that he's never shared with anyone. He was a pastor's kid. He was confessing all the stuff he did, and I was like, "Dang, I'm next." And I remember feeling sick but excited because like I've never told anyone these things, and I remember just fully exposing, here's how I am, and for the first time feeling genuine freedom, and that was a genuine surrender to the Lord. It says, "Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom." And it was the first time I actually surrendered to the Lord in that way of saying like, all right, like confess your sins to your brothers. It was the first time I experienced that healing, that sense of there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And I know at that point, that year, my life certainly changed. It was an actual time of surrender and wanting to understand and pursue Jesus and allow him to actually be Lord and dictate my life. I decided to not transfer to that school in New York. And I met Kendra at the school in Texas, and here we are.
That's tremendous. Thank you for sharing. How would you say that that's central to you, and then you're serving your neighbors by being a financial planner? Maybe you share that next part, and then I'll be done for a while and hand it over to Jared and Ben. Where along the line between then and now, then, did Bitcoin come into your journey? It's not right away. It doesn't sound like.
No, so I'll sort of connect the dots. So end of high school, when I was living that duplicit life, one thing that was really important to me is I was obsessed with money. I wanted to be fabulously wealthy by a certain age. I had particular goals in mind. At 30, I wanted a net worth of $1 million. By 35, of X million. At 40, this many companies in this many areas and fields, and was very driven for money. And in college, I surrendered that to God. Like I didn't care. Like I figured I'd probably eventually just go into ministry in some capacity. Kendra thought that she would probably move and be a full-time missionary in Africa. She always figured she would, after college, move to Africa and marry like a tribal dude somewhere deep in the bush. She got pretty close with me. So I completely surrendered that. And oddly enough, we got married young. I graduated college early. We got married, and we were like super poor newlyweds. I always romanticized being a broke newlywed. I always thought it'd be fun, and we did it, and it was sort of fun. I enjoyed parts of it for sure. It brought us closer, and it was sweet memories. But certainly didn't have any pursuit of being wealthy. It was just I didn't care about it any longer. However, once I hit mid-20s, I was at a point between jobs of like, all right, I need to figure out what I actually want to do when I grow up. And I started thinking about financial stress. Like money is the number one cause of divorce every year. It's a top cause of suicide, of depression. And I figured I would love to help families actually have really healthy conversations about their money and then help them identify what's important to them and then just use their money for that. It seemed very simple. At that point, I didn't know what a certified financial planner was. I didn't know what a financial planning firm was. I just wanted to help people have healthy money conversations and use their money well. And that got me into the financial planning route. I took a very entry-level job and then just started working a ton and became very convicted of wanting to learn more and more, because the more I learned, the more I could help people. And eventually came to the conclusion of, if I want to help people the most I can, I need to go to this type of firm. And eventually realized, if I want to help people in the way I feel is absolutely best, I can't find a firm like that to join. I guess I need to start it. And along that way, I discovered Bitcoin. I heard about Bitcoin in 2012, very passingly, dismissed it, came across it again in 2015, dabbled in it, but again, speculatively as more of like a stock type asset, not as money, and really understood it in early 2020. My ears were perked when the talks of COVID in China, before things were shut down here, the talks of like, if this comes to the States, the implications, I started thinking like, okay, this could get really interesting real quick. So I had back in my head, I need to start doing some homework on the implications of the government shutting everything down, yet they're saying that if they do that, they're going to somehow keep everything going. And I realized real quick, I need to figure out what money really is, because that's not how money is supposed to behave. So fortunately, I already had a pretty good understanding. I had a decent understanding of Bitcoin, had a good understanding of gold, had a really good understanding of the stock market and of real estate. So I just took, a couple of weeks of going on really long walks at that point, and came out the other end of the rabbit hole with, okay, Bitcoin's the best form of money that I found, and therefore want to adopt it. So that's when I moved all of Kinder and I's money into Bitcoin and really adopted that. And I was at another financial planning shop at that point and realized that was a point of contention with my convictions and how I was able to serve clients. So I later on started this firm and haven't looked back since.
That's tremendous. So Bitcoin's been at the heart of your firm since the beginning. Although to carry over our conversation, it sounds like, well, how about that? How do you bring up Bitcoin then to the folks that you serve?
Yeah. So yes, it has been an integral role since day one. Now, ironically, it plays this very central role in some senses, and I have a sore thumb right now. I was playing basketball yesterday and just jammed the mess out of it. So there's nothing significant about this thumb compared to all the other phalanges. However, it's sore, so it sticks out like a sore thumb. And Bitcoin is that. I don't think Bitcoin is a special part of financial planning, but yet it is. It's a sore spot. Money itself is a sore spot financially. And because of that, it does stick out. It's a massive part that needs to be addressed, yet is not a special part. Like I see that regularly amongst Bitcoiners is Bitcoin is my financial plan. That's like saying that the S&P 500 is my financial plan, or taxes is my financial plan. It's like, I don't think you know what you're saying. So now with that said, I think it is an important part of financial planning. How do I introduce it? So routinely, I'll go on a big podcast that is focused on Bitcoiners, and I'll have this wave of super Bitcoin maxis come in as clients. And, whenever we have like Bitcoin maxis come on as clients, they expect us immediately to talk about Bitcoin. And that's why they hired us, is to build a financial plan that is built around their convictions of Bitcoin, tax planning, estate planning, other portfolio around Bitcoin itself. But the majority of our clients are normal people. Like I would assume, like, your friends or family or parents or whoever, like people you care about. If you told them, hey, go talk to this financial planner, and they had Bitcoin on their landing page or on their business card, they'd probably laugh and definitely not talk to that guy because he's crazy. So I do not lead with Bitcoin. With new clients, typically, if they don't come to us through a Bitcoin lens, we wait until we've built trust and demonstrated value through other means of financial planning, through demonstrating I'm indeed not an idiot by our tax planning and estate planning and insurance and all these other things. And once we've demonstrated those areas of expertise, then when it comes to, typically it comes along with the investment side of things, I'll bring up Bitcoin. Say like, all right, we're going to talk specifically about your investment portfolio today. And as we go into that, you should probably know something about me and our firm and our clients. And then I tell them about Bitcoin. And I ask like, okay, now that you've heard that, what do you know about Bitcoin? What have you heard? What do you understand? And I allow them to get that off their chest. And sometimes they know a lot. Sometimes they think they know a lot. Sometimes they admittedly know very little. But allowing them to first air what they understand is really important. If someone has a grievance and they're holding that the whole time that you're educating them, they're not going to hear anything you have to say because they think that they've got a stacked deck in their hand. Why would they care about listening to you when they already have it won? So we make sure to allow them to be disarmed through airing any concerns they have, and then go from there. So we talk through like, the typical Bitcoiner stuff. So like history of money, stores of value, leading up to usually like 1980s. And then we'll flip over to the history of cryptography and the pursuit of internet or decentralized money systems. And then if we've done a good job of linking history of money and linking decentralized money, then the obvious thing is like, wow, Bitcoin's actually a solution to a massive issue. And then the next logical question is, I should own some. One, how much should I own? And two, how do I buy this thing? And that's where these always end up. And it gets to what degree do I own it? What's the allocation weighting our portfolio? And then it progresses from there.
I want to sort of go back or maybe take us another way. I love the intentionality you have, Jim, when you're talking with people about what is money for, what is retirement for, what is estate planning for. So I serve a church, like most in our church body, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, that is full of 65 plus people who are retired or are close to retiring. And, a lot of them say, well, my best years are behind me, or, oh, I'm so excited that I'm going to retire. And I always look at them and say, well, there's no retirement in the Bible. And the only retirement there really is in the Bible is when you die. And so exactly what you said about thinking about your purpose and the ways in which you, by having that freedom, can then serve and use your gifts and the talents that God has given you is such a beautiful thing. Because I think I'm 32. So as a 32-year-old, it's easy to get caught up in I just need to make sure I have enough money. But then, the next question is, well, how much is enough? But really, the question is, well, what do you want to do with that? Why, like you said, why is it important for you? What are your goals? What are your hopes, sort of thing? But I think also the good thing what you're doing is you're allowing people to sort of ask, what is important? What is my value now too? That those conversations you have are not just going to impact the future, right? Obviously it will with their financial planning. But I can't imagine someone having a conversation with you about, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what is important to me. And then not going home that day and living a different life because of the conversations that you had with them as you process through them. What is important to them? What are their values? What do they want to do? I mean, it's beautiful work that you're doing in that too. So my question for you though, I think we talked with Dan Sherman, 2 or 3 episodes ago, who wrote The Gospel According to Bitcoin. And he frames the whole book in the question of what people ought we to be, as it says, I think first or second Peter talks about, hey, now that because we know Jesus is alive from the dead, because we know he's risen, what are the sort of people that we ought to be? And he frames it in the sense of, if we assume that Bitcoin is going to some crazy number, we're going to have massive amounts of wealth. And history is pretty clear that if you've won the lottery, that usually ruins your life. And it's not usually a good thing. And so we have to take seriously this question of who ought we to be if this thing plays out in the way in which we think about it. And so when you engage with people, when you talk with them, but especially, we're talking about Lutheran Christians here, that's our sort of primary audience, but just Christians in general, when you talk with them about sort of Bitcoin and financial planning, I mean, what how does faith play in it for them? But then how does your faith play in it too? Or maybe just the way you see your faith involved in what you do, especially to talk about Bitcoin and retirement purpose, value, stuff like that. Talk a little bit to that.
Man, okay, that's an interesting thing that I navigate regularly. So a considerable amount of our clients are not Christians. And I am cognizant of the role that I'm invited into people's lives too, why they hired us, but then also the place of like, what is my ultimate, like, what will I stand before Jesus one day and give account for? It's like, man, you outperformed the S&P 500 for 7 years in a row, whatever. It's like, all right, like, I won't get, I'm not going to get many crowns to cast before him because of that, or so I have to consider like why, like, what is my ultimate role of stewardship here, and that's always, it's just an interesting pool, I would say. As a Christian, anything and everything we should do should be a ministry. And I am aware, like there's a saying, and maybe I'll ruffle feathers by saying this, I don't know. There's a saying that I grew up hearing, and it's like, preach the gospel at all times and use words when necessary. And it's like, oh, everything you do should preach the gospel. It's like, dude, just because you're a gentleman and open the door for somebody at the coffee shop and like, wow, like that was very kind of you. I bet you're a Christian. I bet that Jesus came and died for me and resurrected on the third day and asked me to give his life to him because of you just opened the door for me. It's like, no, preaching the gospel requires you using words to proclaim the gospel, the good news of Jesus and that message. Like, that's necessary. And yes, your life should echo that message and should bear witness to that message. But we shouldn't assume that just because we're being like gentlemen, that is preaching the gospel. So I'm aware of that as well. So like in my life, it's like, oh, Jim, you can preach the gospel just by doing your work well. It's like, that's not preaching the gospel. That's me doing my work well. But where's my crossover?
Yeah.
I'm like, if I worked for a large institution, I could do my work really well. But the moment Jesus, is in the conversation, it's a no-go. I don't have that here. I can do whatever I want. Maybe I'll take on a lawsuit. I don't know. But I guess I'll find out one day if necessary, because I will. That is a place that I'm open to and willing to go to with our clients. Again, being aware of the place that I'm invited to in people's lives to speak to them, not taking advantage per se, but also not missing the opportunity to speak to people. And again, it's like I'm using every word except for what I'm trying to say. Not preaching the gospel without actually preaching the gospel. I don't ever want to do that because that's silly. But also making sure that, hey, they hired me so I can be a good financial planner. That's my actual role. That also, man, it would be a shame. I sent out an email probably about 5 months ago, found out there's a family I've worked with for several years. They actually worked with me at a prior firm, and the husband passed away. He was in his mid-30s, passed away insane and super unexpected. And I emailed all of our clients as soon as I heard about that and shared with them. I didn't share, like, obviously details, but I was like, hey, this happened. And I want for you to remember, like, nothing is promised. And, like, take note of this. But then also mention, like, it would be a shame if I help you navigate well your financial decisions your whole life, yet never introduce you to the most important decision you can ever make. And, like, just blatantly preach the gospel to all of our clients in an email then. Because, yeah, like, how foolish would that be for me to, like, have that role in people's lives to help speak wisdom, but yet leave out the one thing that is the source of all wisdom. That's the fear of the Lord. It's the beginning of all wisdom. So I couldn't fully do my job well without introducing that.
Well, and I think you said it before that just like introducing Bitcoin, what you're going to do is you're going to build trust with those people first, right? You're going to show them that you're not just there to increase their wealth, but that you're there to help them and to serve them and to care for them. And in a lot of ways, you earn that right to sort of have that place to say those things, that they trust you with that sort of thing. And so, hey, well, then if you can trust me over here, then are you willing to maybe explore this thing too? Are you willing to talk about this sort of thing? I really appreciate what you said, though, too, that you have to actually use words, because I think that's something that all of us struggle with. That it's not, we would all like to not ever have to say that, but that's exactly what it is. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing the word of Christ, right? We have to actually proclaim with our mouths what Jesus did for us, for all people, that they might come and believe in him too. So one more question about sort of faith and tension in that way. When, I guess maybe even the answer could be no. So when you talk to Christians about Bitcoin, do you find them, if you're talking to Christians, do you find Christians more open, more closed off? Do you get more of the, hey, you're gambling? Aren't you just speculative? What are your general reactions with Christians when you're talking about Bitcoin? Just curious what those are like for you in your life.
I'd say it's probably a mixed bag. It depends on your background. Like maybe if you're a Christian who grew up in like Dave Ramsey circles, you're possibly influenced to disregard Bitcoin immediately with zero rational objection because of that influence. I have clients who are massive Dave Ramsey people, like Dave Ramsey to a core, who are also Bitcoin maxis to a core that I orange pilled several years ago, who are like, man, if he would just let down his guard and just take time to learn about Bitcoin, he also would be a Bitcoin maxi. So totally. Those types like maybe are harder to get to Bitcoin than non-Christians. Other people, like, yeah, they're maybe more gracious or willing to listen to you. I'd say it's probably a mixed bag. Probably further into maybe your willingness to question things and to I don't want people to take a mindset of dissension or being disagreeable for the sake of being disagreeable. That's dangerous and frustrating. But also, I think it's important to be willing to ask hard questions and question what you believe and why you believe it. I think that's really important. I think there's a lot of people who cannot defend their faith because they actually don't understand their faith, because they personally have never asked the right questions, maybe because out of fear that they won't be able to answer those questions well with the gospel. And I think a lot of that bleeds over to other places of your life, versus if you're willing to go there with your most foundational part of who you are, of who am I and where did I come from and what am I made for. If you're willing to go there with that, you're probably willing to go there with any other topic. And if you can do that with intellectual curiosity and intellectual honesty and consistency, that I think that naturally should, one, lead to Jesus, and then two, would lead to Bitcoin.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's all I got, guys.
Love it. I'll take up another question. So, Jim, every financial planner has to help clients deal with volatility, right? This is like core to a financial planner. I'm sure that you get questions, especially today's April 8th. We had there was lots of talk over the weekend about, will we have a Black Monday? And there's lots of debate going on right now in our country and in the world about where are we at financially. And there's a lot of conversation in the Bitcoin community about whether we're in a bull market and just kind of a little bit down, but on the way to the next major rocket up, or if we're starting into a bear market with Bitcoin. How do you help clients, especially deal with the volatility of Bitcoin? And does the volatility of Bitcoin, or your kind of understanding of like the ups and downs, the 4-year cycle, or the way that it's tied to M2, for example, do those influence how you encourage clients to get into Bitcoin, or is it just like dollar cost average and don't worry about the market at all? So how do you navigate some of those kinds of questions once somebody says, yeah, right, I'll get some exposure to Bitcoin, and then they start to watch the up and down roller coaster?
So it's really important that if you're anything that you invest in should be built on a foundation of education. Proper education is going to build conviction. Now, if you invest in something that's status quo, you probably don't need as much education, because your conviction will be based off of this is normal, thus it has to be right. But if you're going to be a contrarian and buy Bitcoin, you better be more deeply rooted, because you're going to have most people saying that you're nuts, and you need to know why you think you're not crazy. And again, that conviction must be built on education. It can't be built on hype or speculation or greed or fear, but rather deep rooted. What is this thing and why is it important? And not why is it important today, but why is it important big picture, and the implications of owning this thing. That's important. If you start with that, so understanding truly what is Bitcoin and why it's important, and what's the probable end state of this thing, then one, you're going to be able to weather a lot more storms. So there's that piece, and then also tying into the financial planning side of things. So understanding like the difference between risk and volatility. Most people think that risk and volatility are synonymous. Maybe you recognize that, no, those are different words, and in theory, they're different. But in reality, most people think that risk and volatility are the same. Like when volatility really hits, you feel that they are the same. Like right now, there's a lot of people who are probably thinking like, yeah, I knew this thing was risky this whole time. It's like, no, you're experiencing volatility. Volatility and risk are not synonymous. If you put your money under your mattress your entire life, let's say you have a 70% savings rate and you make $100,000. You are able to save 70 grand per year from when you're 20 till you're 60 and then retire. Well, the problem with that is by the time you're 70, by the time you're 60, that initial 60 grand you saved in year one, or whatever I said, is going to be worth what? Maybe a quarter, if that, of what it was initially worth. So it was super non-volatile. It never changed. You can lift up your mattress every day, and the exact same amount is there, and you're not really noticing day to day the purchasing power move, but it exists. So sitting in a non-volatile asset is death by 1,000 cuts. It's like, I could go through a dunking wheel but ultimately survive, or I could just be slowly lowered under the water and drown eventually. And that's sort of the difference of owning bad assets that feel comfortable for a prolonged period of time, but they're ultimately going to lead to my financial demise, versus owning something that I think will outperform, but along the way, like, strap in. Helping people understand volatility versus risk, understanding what you truly own, and understanding like my job is more nuanced than like buy Bitcoin, look, and forget about it. It's involved with every aspect of your life. So we have to think through like sequence of returns, risks, and like the what ifs. So that's how we do our job. It's sort of a flow chart I put things through. It's values, goals, decisions, and actions. So we anchor in values. What truly is important to you? That should inform the goals. Goals are the tangible things that you're shooting for that are informed by your values. And your goals are going to change. Like values, if like spending time with my family, being generous with others, leaving a legacy, those are important to me. It's like, okay, well, those are going to play. They're going to play their way out in different ways throughout the years, and those ways are going to change, and that's okay. So values, goals, decisions. Like, all right, what things I don't know what your life is going to look like in 10 years, and I would assume that your goals today are a lot different than they were 10 years ago, and that's totally fine. What decisions are we probably going to have to face? What's probably going to impact your plan? What things, if your plan is totally derailed in 20 years, why do you think that happened? What was the most likely probable cause of that? So helping navigate those decisions as much as we can preemptively, but then also navigating them well as they come up. Then finally taking action. If we've done a good job of the earlier things, the action steps should be pretty simple. But yeah, it can't just be like buy Bitcoin and pretend it doesn't exist forever and that's your plan. Like, I mean, I get phone calls and emails and stuff all the time. Like, hey, Jim, we just found out we're having another baby. Didn't think that was going to happen. Or, hey, I just lost my job. I guess that business we've talked about starting is going to happen. What do we do? Literally just before this, I got a phone call. Hey, Jim, like this family has been renting for a long time so they could buy more Bitcoin. Hey, Jim, we just found out that our landlord is actually going to move back into our house and they're kicking us out about a year earlier than we thought. What do we do? Do we buy a house now? Do we keep renting? If we buy a house, like we've been saving in Bitcoin, assuming that it's going to be a long time before that. Like those are real life conversations I have all the time. So I wish I could say it's as easy as, buy Bitcoin, that's your financial plan, but it's way more nuanced than that.
So without giving us any details of that family that's renting, let's just hypothetically say that I did the exact same thing. So my landlord isn't wanting to move back into our house yet, but what advice? Let's talk about the housing market for a little bit, and how you're advising people to think about housing market, other potential investment opportunities. Housing, I would guess you are of the opinion that your house is not your best investment. So how do you help people think about things like housing and investments and taking care of their assets long term?
Kendra and I sold our house to buy more Bitcoin. We did that. We rent. I enjoy it. I like the flexibility we have. We've talked about building, and we probably will do that eventually. We've also talked about buying a house in the mountains to escape the Texas heat during the summer. We'll probably do that eventually. But right now, we've come to the conclusion we really enjoy the flexibility we have, the flexibility to, like, we decided just the other day, like, hey, we want to go to Italy. We've talked about it for 20 years. Let's do it. So we're going to go to Italy in like a month and a half. And then we're going to spend a good amount of time in the mountains this summer as a family, and like just different things we can do because we have like an insanely low lifestyle needs, which allows more for wants. Or like, hey, things come up and we really want to be able to give towards that thing. We can, because we don't have a bunch of musts in our life, and we love that. So we're leaning into flexibility right now. The do I own a house versus rent? It's a somewhat money decision, but also like we have to recognize you're not a spreadsheet. We're not trying to optimize for an equation. We're optimizing for what y'all value. And some people, it's just like, man, I want to nest. I want to have a place that I feel is my own, and we can be rooted and build a family and make memories generationally. Like, okay, that's awesome. And we shouldn't try to put that in a spreadsheet or pretend that the spreadsheet is a primary motivator. So we can't lose sight of that piece. But if we are looking at purely financially, like, all right, you bought a house. Let's say you bought a house in 2020 for $300,000, and you can sell it today for $500,000. It's like, oh, Jim, I increased by whatever that is, 66% the value of my house, and it's tax free because I reached the 2 of the 5 year rule for my primary residence, and that's awesome. It's like, well, that's great. What if we priced that in Bitcoin? That would have been, let's call it Bitcoin at that point was 6,000 per Bitcoin. All right. Versus today, like if we just change the thing that we're pricing this thing in, we can really come to terms. What are we valuing our assets in? What's the numerator versus the denominator? So if we did pretend that you are equation, then we can try to view it through that lens as well, and taking somewhere in that mix. And I think that's really, really important to have these conversations regularly. So Kendra and I regularly have conversations about what's important to us as a family, both now and long term, and allowing, especially those long terms, things to inform how we're living our life now. Like we want to make sure that we're building memories as a family, that we're teaching our kids that it's not about money. We're teaching our kids to be generous. We're teaching community and consistency. And investing in the people that you're around. And again, being able to go and do things together. And all of these leading back to, well, for right now, we're fine. We live a really modest lifestyle. Like I drive a 2012 beat up Subaru, and she drives a 2012 beat up minivan. And I love that. And our kids ask at times, like, why don't we have these other things? Or how much money do we have? Or these, it's like, we take the opportunity to have those conversations. And I love that. I welcome it. So there's a deep crossover what I do of being like a life coach and then the financial analytical side as well. And it's really fun. It's like my job is to essentially work a puzzle that knew the picture on the puzzle box is shifting as you realize, man, it's actually this that I've realized is more important. And I really want to lean to this little thing. That picture's always changing. So we're going to move pieces slightly. And all of a sudden, the IRS throws in 10 new pieces to the box. And the markets come in and take 5 pieces away. And that's my job, is to regularly help you build a puzzle for ultimately what you're trying to solve for.
I love how deeply human your approach to financial planning, financial management is, because so many times, like you said, people treat it like it's just a spreadsheet. And it seems to me that the way that you've built your business has this huge moat around it, with AI and talk of all kinds of automated financial planning tools. AI can never replicate that deeply human question and kind of life coach. So I love your approach to what you're doing. It truly is a vocation. Lutherans talk a lot about vocation, serving your neighbor in love. That doesn't always have to mean just preaching the gospel, certainly part of it, but the way that you approach your work is just deeply human. I really appreciate that. So you mentioned the IRS, and in this just most recent conversation, you mentioned giving. So I'm interested in, how do you help clients think about giving, especially now that most people don't itemize on their tax statement anymore. We gave our tax preparer our giving statement just because my wife said it just makes me feel better to be able to say, here's what we gave. How do you help people think about charitable giving, and what are your thoughts on giving to the government, and how best to avoid doing that if that's not something that you greatly value?
Oh man. Okay, there's a lot of places I could take that conversation. Let's see. From a conversation standpoint, I initially broached that, like, if they're not a Christian, I just generally ask, like, do you tend to give to charities or individuals? And we have to learn that first. And then if they are a Christian, I'm assuming, but I want to validate that assumption that they do give, and at what rate. And then we have to talk through, like, yeah, I tithe 10% to my church, and maybe they are a place that they do itemize their deductions. Then you have to recognize, like, all right, we're not tithing so we can optimize our taxes, but I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't mention these things. So I bring up things like giving assets, like appreciated assets versus giving dollars, or using a donor advised fund, or ideally using a donor advised fund to give appreciated assets. And ultimately, ideally, would be using a donor advised fund and using what's called bunching. So you can bunch your itemized deductions into 1 year, give it to a donor advised fund, and then step at your cost basis with the cash you would otherwise given, and then take the standard deduction for the following few years. And I bring that up, but then also recognize most people just want to give to their church and do that on a regular basis, and they're not doing that to optimize from their taxes. So, but at least introducing them to these options. So yeah, there's certainly technical sides of giving that can be done. Do you give to an individual? Do you give to a qualified charity? If it's a qualified charity, what should you give? If you have Bitcoin that you bought at 4,000 and now it's worth 80,000, and you were going to give 80 grand this year, maybe you give that Bitcoin, and that cash that you were otherwise going to give, you take that cash, you buy Bitcoin with it, you just stepped up your cost basis from 4 to 80. Like, that's pretty simple. Well, my church doesn't take Bitcoin. Well, maybe we can use a donor advised fund, give the donor advised fund that Bitcoin, and direct the donor advised fund to then give the US dollars to the charity. And then again, that's where the bunching comes in. Well, maybe you're going to, maybe you take a standard deduction every year, because you're right at total itemized amount would be 29,000. It's like, man, what if 1 year you itemized a whole lot, and the next few years you took the standard? So these things come up a lot, but there's nuance there, because I don't expect people to try to view their tithes through a tax primary lens. As far as giving, or taxes, that's an interesting place. of course, I want to take Jesus' words as far as like giving to Caesar what's his. That's important. And I think Christians, no matter what citizenship you have, Christians in any nation that they're under should be the best citizens, because we're instructed to do that. If you're a Christian, you live in communist China, I'm sorry for you, but man, you should be the best citizen in communist China. They should view you as, wow, you are someone who honors authority, yet will not submit the authority of Jesus to the state's authority. But besides that, like, you are going to honor them. Same thing in the U.S. Like, that should be everywhere. We should be the best. Now, the U.S. is interesting because we're built on this pillar of sort of individualism and trying to optimize for yourself. So where's that? I think by decree, we have the ability to try to not pay as much in taxes as we have to, or paying as little that we have to as possible. And I'm totally fine with that. That's why the tax law is given, is to show how can we pay less in taxes legally. And I certainly want to help our clients do that. I feel like I just talked a lot.
That's the old joke, I think, Jim, that tax evasion is a felony, but tax avoidance is the American way, is what I've heard it said before. And that's understood. Yeah. Well, we want to honor your time. And so maybe I'm going to take the last poll here with two questions. I have one, actually a technical question, or a bit more, not technical, but specific about your financial planning with folks. And then I have one that maybe comes all the way back around and thinks of you and Kendra, your 4 children, us and our wives and our children, and what's most important to us in life. So those are generally what they're about. The specific one to financial planning, though, when you came in as the class of 2020 or so, and you were probably thinking about investing. I mean, basically, you're going to use an exchange at that point. You're going to buy Bitcoin. You're going to either keep it on the exchange, or you are going to bring it over into cold storage. Of course, there was a grayscale option at the time. Maybe not talk about that, as that's winding down. But nevertheless, 5 years later, there's more options to get exposure to Bitcoin. We've got ETFs now. We've got publicly traded companies that are acting as proxies for this. You've got IRA investment vehicles. I can't quite remember. Maybe they existed 5 years ago, but they certainly weren't as apparent as they are now. The ability to invest in an IRA or Roth IRA, Bitcoin itself. So could you just speak to this? Are there any that keep coming up for you and your clients? Are there some you avoid? Are they all at your disposal? It just depends on the client. I'm just curious how that's playing out in your firm right now.
Again, we're not held captive to any product, any institution, anything. I'm genuinely held captive to what is best for the people that we serve. And that allows free range of taking inventory of what the options available, who are the people that we're serving, and making sure that those things are married together. Generally, the exchange that we choose is River. I like that for several reasons. If I were to trust an exchange, it would be them. We still certainly endorse moving Bitcoin to self-custody, but I like River personally. I like them because they don't have other cryptos being flashed. So you're not going to have someone being tempted to go buy something they see is up by 28% in a day while Bitcoin's up 3% or something goofy. So I enjoy that. We talk through other exchanges. We have clients who live in New York. If you live there, you can't use River. You can't use Strike. You can't use Swan. You're basically stuck with Coinbase. And I'm not a big fan of that. We don't tend to use them unless we have to. So our clients who use Coinbase, that's fine. We just make sure that we sweep it off regularly. We use what we can, and where we're forced to use things, we do so in the way that we feel is prudent. We talk through, once you obtain this, how do you hold it? Do you keep it on exchange? Do you move it? We talk through hot wallets and just a cold storage individual wallet, or multi-sig, or multi-institutional multi-sig, and we walk through these things. And if you hold this thing as outright versus if you hold it inside of a Roth IRA, the difference is there. There's certainly a lot more options. There's some that are great. There's some that are great, but maybe overkill and really expensive. And there are some products that are here today and probably won't be here in a few years. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people with pure intent in this field, but are trying to figure out how do you build a product around Bitcoin itself. And sometimes that can lead to people wanting to get greedy, trying to find things. They're trying to force a product into Bitcoin, and you have to be aware of those.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you. Well, then I'm going to, we haven't necessarily fully coordinated this, but we're a little bit over an hour now. I want to honor your time and ask what I think might be then a final question. As we've talked through much, clearly there are some just watershed moments in your life that have changed the whole course of your life. You could have talked probably more, I'm certain, about your parents and growing up, though what you did say of them was clear of your love for them. You talked about a freshman year in college and minimally, awaking to your life in Christ. And you talked about some freedom even in that, and confessing these things and forgiveness. So your life in Christ, the death and resurrection of Christ being central. I'm going to guess that marriage was another one of those watershed moments, and then parenthood. I just can't imagine that they're not. And I think I've heard you talk about each in other places that I can maybe offer it as such. Here's what I want to ask. There's probably a lot of people who could join you that far, right? Your faith, your life in Christ, marriage, parenthood, a vocation that you truly feel called to. How would you say that Bitcoin has been watershed for you personally, or changed your view of the world? Because for me, I'm going to say it has. It's become a particularly hopeful vision of the world. Of course, my capital H hope is in Christ. I say that, of course, and yet at the same time, if there's a listener listening and you have questions about that, I think I can now squarely say, look up any of the four of us, and we'd love to talk with you about your hope in Christ. But then I also have maybe a lowercase h hope, though with strong conviction in Bitcoin, and I certainly gather the same from you, Jim. So when it comes truly to like your worldview, what has Bitcoin done for your worldview, your outlook as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a family member?
It's funny. I'd worked in money for several years and have a really good understanding of helping navigate all things money decisions, but for a long time did not understand actually what money itself is. Mm-hmm. And that's a core pillar of Bitcoin. If you don't understand what money is, you'll think that Bitcoin is a solution in search of a problem. But once you recognize what money actually is, you recognize that the quote unquote money that we're used to dealing with is not money in its pure sense. Bitcoin is that. And once you realize that, you start realizing there's a lot of other fractures and issues in the underlying monetary and fiscal environment. You realize that there's a lot of things broken. The implications of everything that's built on a broken money system. People don't understand why inflation exists. We don't understand why people are drawn to invest in bonds when bonds are paying negative interest rates. Mm-hmm. A lot of weird things that you're not going to understand until you really start understanding money. And Keynesian economics will attempt to give a solution. Economics made zero sense to me in college, and that's because I was fed Keynesian economics, and that does inadequate job of explaining things. Bitcoin solves those and explains it in a very logical manner. So yeah, reframed what is money and helped me really start connecting the dots in a much deeper and from a better foundation.
Jim, this has been a fantastic conversation. Really appreciated your connecting these deeply human things like the importance of family, the importance of values, and what we hold dearly. Certainly the connection to Christ and our Christian faith, our hope in Him, and then connecting all these financial pieces. You do it in a beautiful way, And thank you very much for joining us. And would you just, to close us out, let people know how they can best get in touch with you?
You can go to our website. It's Intentional Living FP, as in financial planning. So intentionallivingfp.com. On there, you'll see my calendar for 15 minutes. If it's just even a one-off question of like, hey, I have this thing, what is it? More than happy to talk with you about that or see if or how we could help in any other way. You can follow me on Twitter or X at Jim Crider TX, as in Texas. Happy to help in any way I can.
Awesome. We love it. Bitcoin Reformation Podcast is not a certified financial planner, but you are. So this is not a financial advice, this episode, but we will certainly send friends to you who are looking for a certified financial planner. Jim, thanks so much for your time. Great to be on today.